You rang, milady?
Yes, Parker. Get out the Rolls Royce.
In the mid-1960s, Thunderbirds was a massive television hit almost everywhere it was shown that wasn't the US, and even before the strings had stopped wobbling, plans were made for a big screen adaptation. 2 films were made, but like engine oil on ice cream, things don't go so well. Thunderbirds Are Go and Thunderbird 6.
It's crazy, but it could work.
Thunderbirds was the most successful of Gerry and Sylvia Anderson's Super Marionation series of the 1960s. The show was lovingly made with a mix of marionettes and high explosives. It provided audiences with a thrilling glimpse of the future, a future where everything explodes. Well look, anything explodes if you use enough aviation fuel and an arc welder.
Thought you'd all be interested down there to hear the news.
Thanks, John.
After the initial batch of 26 one-hour episodes was completed, Anderson and company weren't hanging about. The newly rechristened Century 21 crew would find themselves split across multiple projects. A shortened second season of Thunderbirds for television, as well as a separate unit filming a big screen adaptation of Thunderbirds. Gerry and Sylvia Anderson wrote a script with Super Marionation director David Lane directing. United Artists bankrolled the film, hoping to get some of that Anderson magic at the box office.
Trouble, Parker.
I thought it was too good to be true, milady.
With the prospects of mega profits from a Thunderbirds movie dangling in front of the filmmakers, Century 21 set to work on the biggest Thunderbirds adventure yet.
FAB.
New puppets would be made with slightly different proportions, and the extra detail of a widescreen cinema presentation meant upgraded sets and models, with all of the Thunderbirds launch sequences needing to be reshot. It's a damn good thing puppets don't get zit, because that could have been so embarrassing.
That's the way it's always been.
Zero X is a manned mission to Mars. An attempt by the Hood to sabotage the launch is thwarted by, of all things, poor choices in footwear. After an inquiry, a second attempt to launch a Zero X mission to Mars is approved, with the caveat that international rescue are involved with securing the launch.
Are you suggesting, sir, that we're incapable of handling our own security arrangements?
I have 862 pages here, sir, which say just that.
And Jeff Tracy isn't so sure, possibly because this guy from Space Exploration Center had started beef with the Tracys in a diss track released on Spotify the previous year.
No international rescue craft is launched unless someone is in grave danger.
A second launch is attempted, with international rescue keeping watch.
Thunderbirds 1, 2, and 3 are on their way.
Scott Tracy thwarts the Hood's second attempt at sabotaging the mission.
There's something wrong with your face. He's got a gun.
After that, the launch goes off without a hitch, and off to Mars they go.
May we offer our congratulations on a superb liftoff. Fortunately, our services were not required, although I can tell you now that a sabotage attempt was made just before liftoff.
While back on Earth, Alan Bloody Tracy is again moaning about being left out as his brothers go off celebrating. I'm totally shocked that the rest of the Tracys would leave Alan behind. Shocked, I tell you.
I'm going to bed.
But won't you have some coffee, Alan?
No, thanks. It keeps me awake.
Alan dreams that he escorts Lady Penelope to an exclusive nightclub where the Shadows are playing with Cliff Richard Jr. Thunderbirds Are Go is set in the year 2065, and so let's do the maths. Cliff Richard would somehow have sired a son when he's around, 95 to 100 years old. Now, there are two things in that. One of them seems possible, and one of them does not. Also, I'm curious to know why his backing band aren't the Shadows Jr. On Mars, the Zero X mission encounters some hostile rock snakes, and they call off the mission, heading home to Earth. But when they arrive, a fault means the ship will crash into a town in Florida.
Thunderbirds Are Go!
The crew's escape pod system is broken, and it's up to Alan goddamn Tracy to fix the ejection system so the crew can escape before the ship crashes into an evacuated town.
Well done.
Alan and Penelope celebrate, but Alan has to wear a disguise, only to find the rest of the Tracy family have also shown up incognito.
It's like a dream come true.
Thunderbirds Are Go was made with the idea of upping the spectacle, and as such the film is basically a very long sequence of impressive model effects with occasional appearances from less impressive puppets. Remember when the TV show had those long sequences of the Thunderbirds craft getting ready for launch? Well, people loved them, despite the fact that most of the time it was used to pad out the runtime after the show was retooled from half-hour to hour-long episodes. This film takes that to the extreme, with the first 10 or so minutes being one long scene of Zero X preparing for launch. 10 minutes out of a 90-minute movie. Look, I guess if you're watching the film at home, this film has many points where you can just go to the toilet, or if you have to, put the kettle on to make a cup of tea. So you can boil the water, brew a cup of tea for a few minutes, let it cool down, and by the time International Rescue actually appears, you're ready to drink it.
Tea time.
There are long stretches of the film with minimal dialogue in favour of set pieces showcasing the model work, and most of the Thunderbirds characters do very little. New puppets had been sculpted for the film, but they somehow look far worse than the TV equivalents, which were of course being used by a different unit making the last few episodes of the series. The Botox Tracy somehow have even less expression than before. It's like watching later seasons of Real Housewives of Tracy Island.
Well, let's hope they attack Parker. Then we may have an opportunity to shoot it down.
This movie has just very little humour, and it's almost completely devoid of any charm, like a psychologist talking to an accountant about fishing.
Just my luck.
Thunderbirds Are Go had a budget of £250,000, which was modest for a feature film in 1966, but enough to make more than 6 or so one-hour installments of the television series. Hopes were high that Thunderbirds Are Go would sell tickets to kids hungry to see Thunderbirds on the big screen and in colour. When the film opened in December of 1966, Thunderbirds was just winding down its first run on British television, so parents couldn't understand why they should pay for their kids to watch something they could see for free at home.
What a magnificent sight.
As such, the film did not do well.
Don't ask me why.
But it also didn't do well because they didn't do the film well. Want to see the Tracy boys in an exciting adventure to save lives? Well, it's mainly Alan. And of course, if you've watched our previous video, you know how much we respond to Alan Tracy with his stupid face. What a giveaway.
Can't a guy get any peace around here?
Thunderbirds Are Go was a film that so comprehensively missed the point that its failure at the box office was about as unexpected as what happens to an egg when it tests gravity by rolling off the kitchen counter.
And I'm telling you, Brains, in no uncertain terms, that we now need a Thunderbird 6.
Despite the lackluster reaction, plans for a sequel went ahead. The Andersons again wrote the script, with David Lane again calling the shots. Thunderbird 6, released in summer of 1968, was an attempt to make a lighter, more fun Thunderbirds film, one with more humour and less tea-making.
Well, I prefer midi skirts myself.
At the very start of the film, an aviation company is excited by the prospect of getting a new design from the secretive designer of International Rescue's craft.
And now, Mr. Hicks, it is with great excitement that we await breathlessly the details of your new design.
To build an airship.
Jeff Tracy has decided International Rescue needs a new vessel. The trouble is, he has absolutely no idea what the craft is for, which is slowly driving Brains around the bend as he comes up with design after design, trying to cater to the whims of his brilliant jerk of a boss, Jeff Tracy.
I just love having my designs turned down.
The struggle between Brains, the brilliant designer, and Jeff Tracy, the visionary who doesn't know his mind but expects you to give him 400 unique possibilities, demonstrates the struggle between creative types and clients. In short, Jeff Tracy is a total knob in this one. Even though the aircraft manufacturers laughed at Brains, humiliating him, they still, for some strange reason, built his airship anyway, Skyship 1. Alan, Penelope, Tintin and Parker are passengers on the airship's maiden voyage, travelling around the world over several weeks. I can't tell you how much I love any opportunity to see more of Alan Tracy. He is by far the best International Rescue— sorry, my spell check was accidentally set to sarcastic. All fixed. So where were we? Oh, that's right. Alan sucks. The Thunderbirds' nemesis, the Hood, once again pops up to try and steal International Rescue's secrets. The crew of Skyship 1 have been brutally murdered and replaced by crooks, and this being Thunderbirds, they've set course for disaster. I mean, uneventful travel is anathema to Thunderbirds, where every bus trip is a disaster waiting to happen. For various reasons, the existing Thunderbirds are not able to evacuate Skyship 1 before it meets its inevitable fate. And it seems the only way to save the passengers of Skyship 1 is by using goddamn Alan Tracy's Tiger Moth.
I don't like the sound of it, Dad. We've got to do something about this.
Yeah, But what?
Thunderbird 6 did use a mix of model work and a real tiger moth in some scenes. The only remotely interesting story from the making of the film was when the real plane was filmed going underneath a motorway bridge. It did bring some heat from local authorities. So even in this case, where there were no puppets or models involved, there were still strings attached. After all of the build-up, Thunderbird 6 is finally announced, and it's...
Brain, you old son of a gun.
Okay kids, put down the Molotov cocktails. There wasn't an overly positive reaction to this film, particularly the reveal of Thunderbird 6 being a vintage plane.
This is the point.
While Thunderbird 6 may have been a fun episode on television, as a feature it has about as much appeal as watered-down clear cabbage soup with even more water. Thunderbird 6 again gives little for Scott and Virgil to do, in favour of the rescuer savant Alan Tracy. Its espionage plot with Penelope and company is fun enough, but again there's a lack of urgency in a lot of the film, and the plot is almost a compilation of the best episodes of Thunderbirds. And it's rather brutal. Virgil and Scott arrive at an ambush scene and just wreck their opponents, levelling buildings before their attackers have even opened fire. And of course, the original crew being killed and their bodies thrown overboard is, hey kids, Alan Tracy.
Milady, he's coming straight for us.
The film had been finished for a while before it was finally released in 1968, but by the end, at the very least, they had left no plot threads dangling. It was down to the wire, but while hanging around to see how the film performed at the box office, newspaper stringers would print stories about how the puppets weren't too emotional about their role in the film. It was at this point that this review ran out of credits with the pun-providing service punflewoverthecuckoosnest.com.
The jigsaw's nearly completed, but not quite.
Like the first film, Thunderbird 6 also did not do all that well at the box office. Unlike the first film, there were no plans for a follow-up.
Down the crows.
By this time, the Andersons were well and truly fed up with puppets, and may have used the mixed response to most of their projects released after Thunderbirds ended its television run as the jolt they needed to make a permanent move into live action. Their next film was Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, also known as Doppelganger, their first purely live action production in years. Like the subjects of this video, this film also did poorly at the box office. In making the leap to a feature film, the natural inclination was to differentiate the film from television with widescreen and colour. However, most of the widescreen processors were either too expensive to use or caused complications when used to film miniatures. One workaround was to find a cheaper, non-anamorphic widescreen format that did not require lenses that distorted. Techniscope was designed in Italy in the early 60s as a low-cost way to put a widescreen image onto standard 35mm film without needing special lenses. Cameras captured 2 frames of the movie onto 1 frame of 35mm film, which halved the amount of film stock required while shooting. Now look, you might think a 2-for-1 deal sounds great at the supermarket, but for a big widescreen movie the trade-off was a softer, grainier image, which worked fine for films wanting a gritty texture like spaghetti westerns, but for a high-tech action film it's not that great. Decades later, these films actually look worse than the TV show that they're based on. While Barry Gray's majestic music suits the languid pace of the films, especially the first one, it isn't enough to G up scripts that aren't particularly inventive, exciting, or amusing. A highlight of the first film is a marching band performing the Thunderbirds theme. But when that's the best you got, wrap it up. If you just want to see long takes of model shots, then these are the films for you. If you're in the mood for an evening of Thunderbirds, you're better off watching any random episode of the television series than these films. It is a pity since the TV show was cut off in its prime due to lackluster sales to American television stations. The big screen version of Thunderbirds was seen as a way to crack that market, but it was not meant to be. The bad news is that the next time you saw Thunderbirds on the big screen, it was in no way an improvement. Thunderbird 6 would at least be remembered for one thing. The laughing puppets would later become a meme of sorts, where it pops up on forums and social media as an animated GIF.
That's GIF.
Oh, f*** off, Alan.
I still say, Alan, that was a fantastic landing.
I was having a grand old time rewatching Thunderbirds for our earlier review, but these films wore out their welcome faster than a door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman who turned out to be a serial killer.
Well, they've gone.
If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.